I have been looking very forward to this conversation. I've gotten to know Tim-ish from my work on the golf course and the odd times that I was calling Bryson DeChambeau and he was on the satchel over there. Folks around the world, it's Tim Tucker. Tim, how are you, man? Welcome to our show.
I'm great. Thank you very much. I appreciate you letting me speak on your show.
Are you kidding me? No ways. I mean, I've watched you with such admiration from afar because, look, the Bryson DeChambeau gig was challenging, and the poise and the professionalism and just everything you did your work with was always intriguing and impressive to me. And then you're a military guy too, so I'm thankful for your service, man.
Thank you very much. Yeah, my pleasure.
Okay, let's get into it. For the folks who don't know Tim Tucker around the world, a lot of the American fans do. Tell us briefly the bio, the story of how you got to where you are, please.
Sure. Yeah. As you said, I was in the military. I grew up here in Amarillo, Texas, where I currently live. I finally moved back here after being gone for 35 years. But I went in the military. I was in the Air Force, and I was on a rifle team for 2 years of the four, which was really fun, and learned some great things about, bullets and ballistics, correct?
Yeah.
So, which I was able to apply to golf with Bryson. But then I got in the golf business. I kind of fell into the golf business and was a club pro, and ended up not really liking that. So I started caddying at a resort called Bandon Dunes on the Oregon coast, and fell in love with that lifestyle. I was playing a lot of golf and trying to, get my game together. And I was playing a lot of competitive amateur stuff and just having a blast with it. And while I was caddying, I was also doing some green reading. I was teaching aim point. I was fitting putters for David Dell. And, an opportunity came along. A friend of mine, Mark McConnell, had hooked me up with Tyler Aldridge. He just got his card and asked me if I'd be interested in helping him because he needed some help on the greens. And that's how I got my start on the PGA Tour. But prior to that, I'd met Bryson when he was 15 in Fresno with Mike Shy, and I taught him aim point.
Okay. So you taught Bryson aim point.
Yeah, when he was 15.
Okay.
And so I kept in touch with him because I thought he was really interesting. He a lot of people know Bryson's really smart, and he is. And he was at the top of his class in high school, and we had really interesting conversations, which I loved. And because I'm a thinker too, I really like to think outside the box. And so we hit it off really quickly. And so I kept in touch with him during the rest of his high school career, and then in college, I just call him here and there, and just see how he was doing.
Yeah.
Well, when he came out on the tour after Augusta, he played at Hilton Head, and I happened to be there with Tyler. And when I first saw him, he just gave me a big hug, and I just check in with him every week and just see how he's doing. Well, I ended up quitting working for Tyler at Byron Nelson, and my dad had driven down from Amarillo to Fort Worth to Dallas, and it wasn't working out for me. And I said, I'm just going to go back with you, play golf for a week, and then go back to caddying at Bandon.
All right.
And on my drive back, Bryson had let his caddy go that same week. I didn't know that, and got a call from him and said, "Hey, don't leave the state of Texas without talking to us." And I ended up flying back to Colonial that next day and working for Bryson, and then that was it. So that's my whole story.
Well, look, now you're on Kurt Kitayama's bag, and everyone talks about the influence of caddies, and it's real. I mean, there's nothing like a wingman, to use an Air Force parlance. You could be the ace, but having the wingman is key to your survival. And to me, caddies are worth their weight in gold. And I've watched you, have an influence on Kurt Kitayama that's been palpable. And I'll get to that in a minute. But before we do that, people want to know. I want to know, first off, working for Bryson, the demands are high. The Bryson DeChambeau I know, they all have high expectations. But he's come with a whole lot more information to have to provide and digest in a very short space of time under high pressure. So I want to talk about the decision-making. I can imagine Tim Tucker, or even me, pacing off the yardage, getting the number to Bryson. Then he starts hitting you with questions, and you coming there with coherent, correct answers all the time. So talk about that some, because I think there's real value that you can help people understand about that performing and deciding and being committed under pressure.
Sure. I would tell you, it's pretty lucky how as I look back on it, how we got to, through our process. And, a lot of this stuff was, obviously we knew the green reading. We spoke the same language on the greens. But as far as our approach to, once, until we got to the green, we really were kind of fumbling through it. And his coach, Mike Shy, at the time, he said, hey, if you hit it 1 yard closer, you'd be the best in every category in ball striking, in iron play approach to the green.
Really? Okay.
And so, I'm like, how in the heck this kid works, you know how hard these guys work on tour. And it's like, if he worked
you spent some long hours in the park.
No doubt.
He was that guy at one stage where the range lights were on, everyone was home. I'd left. Then he turned on the Golf Channel, and there's Tim Tucker and Bryson DeChambeau on the range still.
Yeah, I mean, this guy was driven to be perfect, and the excellent golfer he is. And I don't think there's anyone that's ever put in as much work as this kid. But as part of that, I was like, how are we going to get this extra yard? It's not going to be through his practice. It's going to be through us understanding how far the ball's actually going. And so I started to apply, some of the stuff I learned in the Air Force to ball flight. And as we started paying attention to that, we developed this really cool process and of being precise as far as the ball flying different distances at different times of the day, understanding green density and how much the ball will release, knowing that it's predictable through preparation. And so as we started to do all these things, we came up with this really great method and approach to, how we got the yardage and what we did. And what I found is that made him focus, that made him feel more confident with the shot we were going to hit, because we hit every single checkpoint. And it was just a process that we walked through. And I really think that, that helped him stay in the moment and commit to the shot every single time.
There is no doubt to that, because I'm a recovering former college golf coach for a while. And I've always maintained golf is like 90% pure panic and 10% pure pleasure. And when you're an adolescent, those numbers are burdensome because of pressure and expectation and all this sort of stuff. But when I walked with a player, as soon as we got to the ball, I'd start hitting him with, what's your carry number? How far has it got to go? Have you kept data on how far the ball's been traveling through the day? And it's like you occupy their minds with this stuff, like you're saying with Bryson, and all of a sudden they might make a poor decision, but at least there's some commitment to it. And there's real value in that, don't you think?
I couldn't agree more. I mean, you're 100% right. Whether it's the wrong decision or not, we don't know it at the time. So he's fully committed, right? We only know after the shot whether what we did was right. And, but yes, being 100% committed. And like you said, as soon as you start hitting them with the information, their mind, focuses on the task at hand and not about what's really going on out there. And I think that's huge.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I have to ask, because, it almost became a meme at one stage, and I was there because I'm with Bridgestone. I might have been I think it was the Tour Championship back in the day. And you guys were spraying golf balls with like a sprayer to just get some moisture on it, to see the performance of the thing. And I was like, in as much as what folks are joking about this is genius. And this to me now sounds like your influence, understanding how the ball's going to perform in wet conditions versus dry, humid, not humid, that sort of thing. Correct?
Absolutely. And I'll give you a great example. So we were at Hilton Head one year. Again, Hilton Head. I love that place. But we were on the 8th. We just walked off the 7th green, par 3, and we're going to the 8th hole. It's a dogleg left, 4 par, tough hole. And, it was a beautiful day, but there was just a cloud that came over and just started spitting mist down on us. Well, I popped the umbrella immediately. He teed his ball up. I held it over so there wouldn't be any water on the ball. He hit his shot. And, we were playing with Matt Kuchar and CT Pan. They didn't even have their umbrella. So, but it wasn't even a thing. It was just a little bit of mist on the ground. Well, when we got to our ball, we could see, the grass was shiny and wet. Well, for us with an 8-iron, Bryson loses 3% of his carry distance when the ball's wet because the spin rate increases.
All right.
So the pin was front right. It was 6 paces on, and we factored that in, and he hit his shot, and it was pin high, and he made birdie. Kuchar and CT Pan both missed the green short, and I believe it's because their spin rates increased and the ball didn't go as far. But we knew that. We knew that happened. And so that's through that testing and understanding what happens to spin rates in all conditions and turf, whether there's moisture on the ball or different turf conditions, sandy, wet sand, dry grass, dry, all the things, different types of dirt, all those things affect how the ball spins.
Let's put Tim Tucker on everyone who's listening to this or watching it on YouTube's bag. Okay.
All right.
Travels farther in warm conditions, shorter in cold conditions. That everybody knows. Sadly, most golfers watching this don't really pay attention to it. Okay. Not dry versus humid conditions. Which one has the golf ball going farther?
So what happens is I'm going to use 2 locations.
All right.
So last week we were down in Austin, Texas. Okay. And in the morning, so let me back up.
Okay.
There's 3 things that affect ball flight. Okay.
Yeah.
We have altitude, we have temperature,
Mm-hmm.
and we have humidity or barometric pressure. Okay. Well, those 3 things combined give you a density altitude. So, for example, in Amarillo, Texas, where I live, we're at 3,500 feet. Okay.
Yeah.
But when it's 80 degrees, our density altitude is 6,500 feet. So where most people would play, hey, I come to Amarillo, it's 3,500 feet. I'm going to play the increase of 3,500 feet versus sea level.
Mm-hmm.
When it's actually 6,500, which is another 6%. And so that's a big one in itself. And then temperature, and then there's another way that we do that. We include that density altitude, but we also readjust for temperature. Yeah. So for Kurt in the morning, when we first teed off one round, he would hit his 600, 191 yards. By the end of the round, 4 hours later, he hit it 211. So I'm sorry, excuse me, 206.
And
so he had a 15-yard.
And hold on. And most folks, here's one of them, luckily, when I've got the on-course microphone, I'll be like, he's really jacked up and the ball's going farther, but it's actually it's some adrenaline, but it's also the conditions.
Correct. Yes. We've all done this playing golf. It's like, boy, the ball's really going far today.
Yeah.
Well, it is because the conditions have changed, right? Or the ball's really going short today. Well, that's because it's colder and the density altitude has dropped.
Yeah.
People say, oh, when I get to the coast, the wind is stronger, or the wind affects the ball more here than it does in the desert. Well, it's because the density altitude is down and the ball's not going as far, but we just attribute that to the stronger wind.
Love it. Okay. So dry, wispy grass, that thing's going to come out of there with a little gas. Moist grass, come out a little slower. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, the thing, it's so funny working for Bryson. I didn't realize this until after I'd caddied for Adam Svensson for a season, and it finally hit me. I don't know why. I called Bryson and told him about it. I'm like, man, we're stupid. But anytime you're in the rough,
yeah,
the ball is coming out with less spin.
Yes.
Always. But it's the moisture in the grass that's making it fly or not, right? Or the reduction in swing speed or ball speed.
Mm-hmm.
So, what we do is we do this test every week where we put a ball in the rough, we go good lie, average lie, bad lie, and we hit 3 shots. And we understand how much each one of those shots how far it's going to fly. And so when we're in the rough, it's predictable.
Yeah.
And so I'll give you a good example. We were at Colonial one year. Bryson's on the 5th hole and hits it in the left rough. And we had 215 in. And this is before he got really jacked up. Yeah. But we knew that the ball if we had a good lie in the rough, it was going to jump 35 yards. And I said, you have to hit a 9-iron here.
I've seen some lies around Colonial that the thing looks like it'll never hit the ground ever.
Yeah, exactly. And I told him, I go, we did the testing. We know this is going to jump 35 yards. He's like, I can't believe I have to hit a 9-iron here. I'm like, hit a 9-iron, hit it 15 feet. And you know how hard that hole is. And he made birdie. And it's like, he wanted to hit a 7-iron and we would have flown we'd have flown to the 13th tee. Yeah. So, but just doing that preparation, and it doesn't take long, but again, if we're going to play in the tournament, we're going to go there to win. We need to do these little bitty things that only take 10 or 15 minutes each week, but they're massive in how we prepare.
Okay. You and I are both flight scope guys. I'm assuming you were because of Bryson.
Yes. Love flight scope.
They've got that environmental optimizer on the X3. And
Yes.
you can plug in whatever atmospheric or air I think air density was the term you used, conditions, and it'll predict for you how your golf ball is going to fly. It's sounding to me like, after listening to you, that this is almost mandatory for anyone who wants to play the game any better. Yes?
Absolutely. You should know it. And so Henry Johnson, the owner of Flight Scope, has been a massive supporter of Bryson, the tour, and me. He's really helped me. Actually, we're working on a project together right now. But yes, I helped Henry with the information on that, how we were doing it. And then, Henry's obviously a brilliant man. So he figured out all the actual math behind it, and so that the Flight Scope will, connect to the local weather station and give you all this data every second, which is brilliant. And the Flight Scope is the best product on the market, in my opinion.
Amen.
So, and I love what Henry did with that. And now he has made it available for everybody to go out and do this. And it sounds difficult. I had a caddy talk to me and he said, "Man, I'd really like to learn what you're doing." And I started telling him, he goes, "Man, that sounds like a lot of work." And I said, "Man, it is, but it is vital for your golfer."
Well, it gets kind of back, and I hope we've sort of answered all the questions, because I was just asking now like a fan who knew enough to be dangerous, but didn't really understand the true ballistics of it all. But your kicking off point where you're like, if Bryson just hit the ball a yard closer from every distance, he'd basically be leading all strokes gained approach categories. And golf is a game to me of distance and direction, where most golfers are worried about direction, but it's the distance, not just long and short, and the control thereof, that's kind of, getting that hand grenade close to the target kind of thing.
Yes, no question about it. That's something that I've worked with Kurt on, in saying we can always be short. We are never going to be long. We've been long one time, one hole where it's hurt us. And a lot of time, I tell him, man, we can, as long as we stay in front of the hole, we're okay. We can have a 30-footer. We cannot have a shot that goes 5 yards long to a back pin where we can't get up and down. I'd rather have the 30-footer.
You remind me of another great Texan like yourself, Ben Hogan, who was quoted, I paraphrase, where Hogan's like, back flags always going a little lower so the ball can skip up. And if I miss it short, forward flags are going a little higher, to have the thing settle down. So I want to make that a lesson for the fans listening, because for you guys at the highest level on the PGA Tour, they're in that place where they hit the ball far enough where they kind of know what their numbers are, so they can afford to leave the ball 35 feet short. But the golfer at large listening to this, I would say pretty much on average, it's the ball short of where it should be. So what would your advice as a caddy be to someone who you're caddying for? Because every amateur I teach and watch, man, they're thinking they hit the ball farther than what they actually do.
Correct. They do. They always think they hit it further, for sure.
Yeah. So
I think too, one, they don't know how far they hit it exactly. And two, they also don't know how far they hit it at certain times of the day, which is really easy to do. But what I would encourage every player to do, if they really want to get better, is go to your club pro, find someone with a Flight Scope, find out how far you hit each shot at a certain time of day. I think just that in itself. And then secondly, I would make sure that your iron gapping is perfect, that it's symmetrical.
Yeah.
And that's really important. There are many pros that I come across, or that I've helped with, that their iron gapping is not consistent. So let's imagine, and if people don't understand what that is, let's say that for Kurt, he has 13-yard gaps between each club.
Okay.
So if he hits an 8-iron 180, he hits a 7-iron 193.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so think about this. If my gapping is not perfect, right? And I say, hey, I'm going to 3/4 this shot. Well, 3/4 of, taking a 3/4 shot with a 13-yard gapping or a 3/4 shot with a 10-yard gapping is different distances.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I can't take off a little, I can't go, hey, I'm going to hit a 3/4 shot here and expect the same result if my gapping is not equal.
Yeah.
Because I know that a lot of people do that. I'm going to hit this a 3/4 shot. Well, how far is that going? If I don't know my gapping is consistent, then a 3/4 shot with my 7-iron may be, 185, but with a 10-yard gapping, it would be, 182. And the 3 yards could be the difference between, birdie, bogey, par, whatever.
Even worse. You sound like the Reverend Tim Tucker. I joked with you before we went on the air, but it's so true, man. And to that, while we're punting flight scope, I see a lot of amateurs. They're like, well, my 5-wood goes as far as my 3-wood. And I'm like, yeah, because you don't have speed enough to keep the 3-wood in the air. So to your gapping thing, this is where you start to modify the club setup in the bag, because for a large majority of these folks, they'll probably hit their short irons a little longer. And when they get to 6.54, those things don't do as much as what they think it does in the air. It's more carry and roll. What say you?
Correct. Yeah, exactly. And you could, you're exactly right in that. And you could say, hey, I'm going to take my 5-iron out because perfect gapping would be 6-4, right? And then I can add, a 5-wood or whatever. And having the proper gapping is just, it's fun to know this stuff, but you'd be shocked at how much it will help you during your rounds.
You know what's so it is fun, and it's fun to hear you go, well, dang, your 5-iron doesn't go what it should. Stop wasting the space in the bag with that club. Take it out. Your gap between 6 and 4 will suffice, and now you can add something else, another weapon in your arsenal.
Yeah, I mean, this is what people don't know about Bryson is that we'd go to a tournament site, and he always wanted. So, I guess the industry standard is if you have a 7-iron, you want it to spin 7,000 RPMs.
Yeah.
And an 8-iron would be 8,000. Bryson always wanted his 800 under the number. So if it were a 7-iron, he wanted it to spin 6,200.
Okay.
And he was able to do that because he hit it so high and could still stop the ball. But he did that because when it got wet, it would spin 7,000 and not balloon.
Mm-hmm.
So we'd go to different golf courses and the spin rates wouldn't match. So we'd just go bend the clubs to whatever spin rate we wanted it that week. So his lofts were all messed up, but they were correct for the spin rates and gapping.
Uh-huh.
And we'd do that every week. And it didn't matter what the number on the club was. It was how far it went. And he wanted that performance to be perfect. Bryson gets, and something I also want to point out about Bryson is that Bryson is a perfectionist.
Yeah.
He does not accept excuses. And what's amazing about that is he's an amazing boss in that way, is that you figure it out. Okay, there are no excuses. I don't want to hear, we didn't know, or I want to know, hey, we missed that. Why? And how are we going to fix it? And, him being that demanding is what, helped make me the caddy I am. Mm-hmm. And the cool thing is it shows that it does transition to other players and not just Bryson. And so I got to give Bryson a lot of credit in that fact of being, what people would say, a hard ass. He knows how to bring out the best in people around him. And if you weren't willing to make that commitment, you couldn't work for Bryson. And so regardless of all the crazy stuff that happened, he was tremendous in that aspect and a great leader in that aspect.
You're a great man for identifying that. You truly are. And, just because I need more stuff to do, I'm a volunteer assistant coach for a high school golf team. My daughter plays on it. And I kind of gave them that lecture a little bit yesterday afternoon. Now, look, these girls are okay. A couple of them are good. But I was like, stop hitting and hoping. At least know something. Because most golfers, they get over it, they pull a club, they probably got the wrong yardage. They haven't considered how far the ball's going or any of this sort of stuff, how they're hitting it on the day. And they just pull out their 7-iron and they just hit away hoping for a result. And what they're going to get is that hopeful kind of a result. But if you sort of know something and you just do that properly, you're setting yourself on the course to success. Would you agree?
100%. And this stuff just, a little bit more effort, Bryson always, and he would agree. He said, Tim, I was never good enough physically. I didn't have the skill level that most other players I was playing against had. So I had to either work harder or I had to think differently. Mm-hmm. And that's really what started him on that journey of getting into the green reading and then accepting the fact that, hey, let's try this. I'd take stuff to him all the time, these ideas I had, and he'd say, let's try them. It was never like, that's stupid. All right, let's try it, see if it works. And if it didn't work, we threw it out. If it worked, we put it in. And he was super open-minded about that. And I think anybody that's successful, you have to be open-minded.
Yeah. And sometimes things will feel uncomfortable, but that's where growth happens, in that sort of situation where you're uncomfortable.
Absolutely.
You talked about your skills parlaying, and it certainly did. And I'll set this up and I'll let you talk us through it. I believe it may have been the Saturday or the Sunday. It was on the 17th hole at the API, the Arnold Palmer Invitational here in 2023. And I was on the call for PGA Tour Live in studio. So we had you guys on the tee there. It may have been Saturday now that my memory is coming back to me. But there was swirling wind. The whole location's in the back there. This par 3 is mean and it sits at an angle to you. And so if you carry it down the right, it's a longer carry. And it was just a tough situation. And guys were missing long and short and left and right, and no one was finding the target. Kurt gets up there, Kitayama, and I can see he's a little uncomfortable. And he's in the routine and he pulls out, and you pull the bag and you stand next to him. All of a sudden, I see you go to the book and you start to point stuff to him, and I can not hear you talking, but I'm like, there's the long yardage, there's the short yardage, winds from here. And you essentially convinced him that 7-iron or whatever it was the correct club. And all of a sudden, this guy that looked like he was kind of deer in the headlights a little bit turned into Superman and delivered this beautiful 7-iron in there, 20, 15 feet or whatever. And if I was there, I would have hugged you, man, because it looked like you just helped this guy to just clear out the clutter. So I want you to talk about that, please, because most golfers, when they're hitting, they're just like, it's like inside the hen house, there's just noise and cackling and stuff everywhere, no focus.
Yeah, sure. We just kind of rebooted. I walked him through the process again. Kurt is he's an amazing guy. I can't speak highly enough about him. His iron play is elite. Bryson was one of the best iron players I'd ever seen in my life. And I would put Kurt right in that category. I think he's a top 10 ball striker on tour. His precision with the irons is blew me away. I did not expect that when I started working for him. And so it makes it easier to know how good he is with that. Right. And, as a player, a lot of times, like I knew the club would carry if he executed, and he did. And again, just walking him through that process and convincing him, hey man, this is where we are. This is how far this club's going right now. And I know, I told him, I said, I promise you this is the right club. And he believed me and he hit it. And, again, all the credit to him for executing the shot. That's actually the hard part. And did. And, it was an amazing week. And this kid has the guts. Like it's unbelievable how he was able to make that putt on 17 to take a 1-shot lead and then to execute on 18 coming down. As that golf course is brutal, and it was set up like a US Open, and he had the guts to reach deep down and do it. And I asked him after, I said, man, how nervous were you? He said, I was more nervous on the 3-footer I had on 1 than I was on that putt on 18. Really? And that shocked me. So these guys, and Bryson used to do it too. I'd just like, I don't know how you had the balls to pull that shot off. It was impressive. And, your brother and you played collegiate golf. You were a 3-time All-American. Like you guys have a special quality in you that gives you that ability to focus and pull out these shots when no one else can. And that's why you're elite.
Apparently you've done your research on me a little bit. I commend you. I got to ask this then. As a caddy, because everyone says to me, it's like, man, I'd love to caddy. Caddying must be the greatest. Have you ever caddied? I'm like, yeah, I've caddied. And I hated it. I was always an instructor, now a broadcast guy. You speak of nerves. I mean, I remember calls I would make when I'd make a caddy, and you convinced of this stuff, but when they're over the ball, you're like, just please carry, or just please, and the ball's in the air, and you're like, no gust kind of thing. Do you have those moments, when you make the convinced call and your guy's over it, and you pull the bag away and you stand there going, oh, sweet Jesus, please let this be the right club?
Of course, absolutely. Our job as a caddy is to assist the player and not hurt him, and this is really funny. My first week with Kurt happened to be at Waste Management. Mm-hmm. And we teed off in the afternoon, and we only played 14 holes. It was due to darkness. We got called off the course. And Kurt was 6 over in our opening round. Yeah. And I called his agent, which is a friend of mine, and I called Kurt's brother, Daniel, and I texted Kurt and I said, man, I could not help you today. You did not have your best stuff, but I hurt you. I cost you shots. I didn't help you one bit when it was going sideways. And I said, I'm embarrassed and I apologize for that. And it won't ever happen again. Or at least I hope it never happens again. And we went out the next day, and he played 22 holes and shot, had 9 birdies and got it back to even par. And I was just impressed with his fight. But I hurt him that day. I didn't help him. I couldn't help him, right the ship and save the shots. It was like when he hit it good, I was wrong with the wind. And when he hit it, bad, it didn't matter. It was like the worst feeling I'd ever had on a golf course, and especially our first round together, right? Mm-hmm. And then, the next day it just all worked. But, our job as a caddy is to make sure that player, that we're helping him, not hurting him. And so, back to answer your question, it's like, yeah, I pray that that's the right club and that we made the right decision together. Hindsight in golf is terrible. We make the best decisions that we can make at the time, and then we have to accept those and move on. So, and I try and put it that way. If I'm wrong, I call it out. Hey, Kurt, terrible club. I did that at the 11th hole last week at Austin. He hit it over the back of the green, and I was like, I hope TV picked it up, because I was just like, well, that was the wrong club. That was terrible, And if I don't call it out, then the player can lose confidence in me. You have to own your errors, and that's what makes you better.
Yeah, there's liberation in truth, isn't there? And any decision is better than no decision. I think too many club golfers are playing golf with no decisions. They see a ball and hit a ball, and that's about the extent of it. Okay, right. You've had me fascinated, and so I've lost time. So we've got to scoot through this stuff a little bit. I do want to get 1 or 2 course management lessons for Augusta National next week, where your guy, I think, is for real. The way he hits the irons, as long as what he is, with you on the bag, I think that's a weapon. But before there, you're an expert green reader. You kind of touched on it. You have this very cool ball marker called the True Aim. I want you to show folks this, because in my experiences, most golfers under aim putts. I have rules in golf, and one of the rules is I've never seen a ball fall up a hill. So you got to give you got to give the slope chance to do its thing. So talk about your ball marker, its inspiration, how it came about, and how it works, please.
Yes, sir. So this ball marker is called True Aim, and I'll show you a picture of it there. Right. Can you see that?
Yeah, I can. For the folks listening on audio only, it's milled steel. It's kind of in almost a rectangular shape with a little chevron at the top and some lines that are essentially like aiming lines. Am I correct?
Correct. Yeah. There's one. The center line is what you would reference for a straight putt.
Yeah.
So kind of the process with this, if you can imagine, name a hole on name a course that you know better than any other, and a hole on that course.
Well, Augusta National.
Okay.
How about number 11? I'm calling corner shots next week, so number 11.
Number 11. Okay, perfect. And what pin do you want to use?
That nasty one. Let's go front leftish.
Okay, good. I knew you
back left, even worse, but front left.
Yes. Okay, so now tell your listeners to do the same thing. Pick a course that they know better than any other. Okay, and imagine, pick a pin, and we hit this ball 10 feet right or left of that pin. So for the 11th hole at Augusta, we're going to hit it 10 feet right of the flag. So a great shot in. And so what we do, yes. So what we do is we mark our ball, and then we take our line on the ball, and we aim it at the dead center of the hole.
Okay.
That'd be the very first process, first step. And then we use the shaft or some reference to make sure it's aimed perfectly at the center. So I always hold the shaft up to my dominant eye and look at it and make sure that the ball.
You think folks must have the line drawn with a Sharpie on their golf ball too for this to work?
I do. And here's why. I tell you, I played 30 years of golf without a line. And as soon as I put a line on my ball, I realized how big of an idiot I was.
Okay.
And the reason I say that is there's a feedback loop. A friend of mine, Jason Goldsmith, he's a performance coach, and he works with several players on tour, and he explained this to me. And as soon as I started doing it, it was immediate improvement. But when we hit a putt, we know if I've hit it the right distance, right? If whatever your delivery speed is, if you hit it that far past, and if you miss the putt, it was perfect speed. But you don't know where we start our putts. And if we have a line on our ball and the line rolls perfectly end over end, I know that I hit it with a square club face. Mm-hmm. So the chances are I started it on line. So understanding that, when I hit a putt and I don't see the ball roll end over end, it tells me that I didn't hit it with a square club face and that I did not make a good stroke. But if I do see that line roll end over end, regardless of what else happens, I know that I executed perfectly. So it's a great feedback mechanism. So I do encourage the line, and to use this process, you must use the line.
All right. Okay.
So we line our ball up at the dead center of the hole, and then the center line on the marker, we match to the line on the ball. So
Okay.
all this process is we're aiming the marker at the center of the hole.
All right.
Okay. Now there's 4 angles left of straight and four angles right of straight.
Okay.
And I classify these as the first angle is flat or subtle break. The second angle is average or obvious break. The third angle is steep. And the fourth angle is severe or max break. We've all hit putts. We said, oh, that broke off the planet. That would be our fourth angle.
Okay.
So we're going to use, we have nine angles. We're going to use a process of elimination to get down to the correct number or the correct angle. So the first question is this putt in your mind, is it straight or does it break?
It breaks.
It breaks. So we've eliminated the straight. If it were straight, we'd put it back down on the straight, the center line and putt. So now we know it breaks. We've eliminated that angle. Which way does your putt break?
Well, that putt that I'm talking about is downhill and from right to left.
Breaks to the left. So we've eliminated the 4 right angles. Now we're using the 4 left angles of straight to project it out to the right. Okay. Now, because we have 4 more angles, we're going to try and eliminate 2 of them. And we say, is this putt not uphill, downhill, but the side slope, is it flat or steep? It can only be one.
It's the side angle.
Or does it break a lot or a little is another way to say it.
It breaks a lot.
It breaks a lot. So we've eliminated our first angle, which is flat, and our second angle, which is average. So now we're on steep and severe. Now, would you say that this putt breaks steep or is it severe?
Steep.
Steep. Yeah. So I'd put the line on my ball down on the third angle, pick my mark up and putt.
It's so, you know what? It's so easy because there's a process of elimination. To me, again, I'm a big one on conviction. You get this conviction about you, but now you got to get there. And when Trevor, my brother, won the Masters, I gave him a similar putting lesson on the Monday morning. And all we were doing was picking start lines. And all he had to do was roll the ball over his intended start line. And when I tested him on the green, you know, the green there right next to 10, behind 1 tee and next to 10 tee, right?
Yes.
You know, the left side of the green close to 10, it falls away from you. It's impossible. So I'm like, find the hardest putt on the green. He goes over there. It's downhill. It's left to right, nasty. And so I'm like, okay, where do you want to hit this? And he said X. I'm like, so I put a ball marker, one of those plastic ones, not your fancy one, down on the line 3 feet in front of him. I'm like, hit it over that marker. Is that your line? He goes, yeah. Over the line, miss. So I was like, is that a good putt? And he goes, I guess. Didn't go in. And so I'm like, well, move your marker. And he did. And he hit the next one over the marker. Ball rolled over and it still missed. I'm like, was that a good putt? And he goes, I see where you're going. And it gets into the green reading thing and starting the ball on line, like you're saying too. But when you start to do that and you see the start lines, then there's an element of freedom to the whole thing too. So you know where you're going. But here's the whole thing, though. You've got to trust this stuff. And so many golfers get over this re-aimed thing with your ball marker that they've got, and they look and the ball hole sitting over here, and they're like, this is wrong. And then they react. Give your take there, please.
Yes, I would. And so what I would say is our subconscious is always aware. Our subconscious is a supercomputer that can do many things, millions of things. Our conscious mind kind of gets in the way of that sometimes. So what I tell people when they select an angle, I tell them never to reference where it's aimed. I tell them to set into it with a line on the putter, with a line on the ball, look at the hole for distance and putt. Okay. And keeping in mind, all we're trying to do is roll the ball end over end. If you stand back and look where that angle's pointed, you're always going to disagree with it because our brain can't do the complex math and we always underread putts. Dave Pell's proved that. Many other instructors prove that. You know that. I know that. I think that I don't think this, I know this. We are better putters than we think we are. And we are worse green readers than we think we are. Most people are the opposite. So they say, oh, I'm a good green reader and a terrible putter. And I'd say, no, that's not true. The putting stroke is really short and easy to execute. It's the easiest stroke to execute, yet we struggle with it. And I think the reason is because we're not picking the right line, which affects how much speed we play to correct for that misalignment. For under reading, we hit it further. For over reads, we hit it softer. So when we have the correct angle, the correct read, our speed improves immediately. Mm-hmm. So I tell people, you're not a bad putter. You're just not following your feedback loop and you're not reading greens properly. This marker cost $100. And I'll tell you a story. This guy called me and said, "Hey, do you offer discounts?" He sent me an email, and I said, "Why don't you call me and I'll explain this to you."
Things handmade.
I bought a driver about 2 months ago for $600, and I was walking out of the golf shop at my club, and I said, "This driver will never save me one shot. It will only cost me shots. My marker will never cost you shots. It will only save you shots." And I said, I should be selling this for $600, but if I were even at 100, people are like very wary of the fact that this works. And I told this guy, I said, "I should sell it for 600. It's already discounted 500. And he bought one, and he's a massive fan of it. And the feedback from this has been amazing. And I'm not trying to be a big salesman here. I want to help people just like you be better golfers. This tool is a phenomenal tool. It's probably the most important piece of equipment in your bag.
I will contend, and you've been very involved in strokes gain, given the folks you've worked with, especially some guy whose name rhymes with Bryson DeChambeau. The key to good scoring is turning 3 strokes into 2. Bobby Jones, and I'm getting to Augusta National here shortly. And 3 strokes into 2 means you're good at stroke number 3. And if you do all third strokes, bunker shot, pitch shot, wedge shot, putt stroke, if you do them well, you're going to make a lot of 3s and 4s. If you do shot number 1 well, you're probably going to make fewer 6s and 7s. So if you want to litter your scorecard with small numbers, do shot number 3 well. And this is why I was so keen to get you, because I can't tell you how many folks I see, then they rake away those short putts that they never make. Then they have to make one all of a sudden in the member guest, and they miss. And then they're like, "Oh, I drove it great." I'm like, "Yeah, but that's not where the hole ends, man."
Yes, I couldn't agree more.
People don't realize what a great putter Bryson DeChambeau was.
One of the best in the world. Yeah, he was. I think it was funny. He struggled with putting immediately on tour, but then he was a top 20 putter on tour, and obviously the longest off the tee. So deadly combination is why he was so great. But yes, here's the other thing. He never practices putting. He worked on his speed control religiously, right? But like during COVID, he didn't hit one putt. In 100 days, he did not hit one putt. And he went to Colonial and finished 3rd. What's that tell you? He didn't practice putting. He didn't touch his putter for 100 days and went out and almost won a tour event. So he has his stroke locked in. He works on speed control every week. He probably practices putting 2 hours, not even, probably an hour and a half a week. And that's all primarily speed control and rolling the ball end over end.
I watched you guys at East Lake, the Tour Championship, the one time. It's got a beautiful putting green there with a lot of tilt down toward the water. And it almost like you guys could predict how far the ball was going to roll. And I briefly asked him, and he goes, "Yeah, we have a system." And I was like, "You care to share?" And he's like, "Not so much." But anyway, it was all about speed control. And on those super fast greens, it looked like everyone else, there was a bit of fright factor on the go, where he looked almost like he could putt confidently, even though there wasn't a bunch of friction on the greens that week.
Yes, we always made sure that the greens were running 11 stimp in his mind. So if the greens were slower, I'd make adjustments. So we did yardage on every putt.
Okay.
And so like a good example would be, let's say that he had a 20-footer and he were coming down to the straight at a 45-degree angle on a 2% slope, right? If he were straight down the 20-footer on an 11 stimp green, right, he would hit that putt 12 feet. But because he was at the 45 down angle, we'd always just do the math and adjust, and he'd have to hit that, 80% of the way. So I'd say, "Hey, Bryson, we're coming down the 45 on our 2%. I need you to hit this 16 feet. And then because he knew the ball speed for every putt and the length of stroke that it took, he'd be able to execute that. So we always did yardage on the green as well.
And by the way, folks, ball speed on the greens is a big thing. Get yourself a flat scope for that as well. Okay. Right, Tim, I've kept you for so long. We're going to have to do a green reading podcast at some stage on a week off.
I'd love to.
Augusta National, you've given away one of the keys already, telling Kurt to putt uphill. the course management around that place, I feel like is something that's overlooked. You know, you can't bludgeon the place to death. You got to, there's nuance around there, and you got to hit the ball well. You got to basically do everything well. But some course management lessons, one or two, maybe three, as you look forward to the Masters next week, please.
Yes, sir. You know, it really gets back to almost every tournament, and the fact that, you know, during Arnold Palmer, we had perfect numbers, it seemed, every hole. And Kurt could hit full shots and be aggressive. Well, then on Saturday, he ended up shooting even par. And it was like, we walked off the course and I go, man, you played so great. We just never really had a number where we could be aggressive to a hole. So we had to be conservative. And because the number didn't match the shot that we wanted to hit. And so at Augusta, it's very penal. The greens are so undulated, you can be in the wrong spot and be out of position and make in three putt or hit it off the green. And so I would you know, when you have the perfect number and have the opportunity to be aggressive. When you don't have the perfect number, you have to play very conservative to the right spot of the green. So I think that's one big thing, one big one there. And then secondly, the wind. And the wind is really tough. You know, when we play the same golf course all the time, you know, your listeners are playing the same golf course, you know all the nuances of the wind. But when you're at a place for a week and you're only seeing one wind for, you know, most of the week, and then all of a sudden you get a wind coming out the other direction, you don't know how it swirls through the trees, it's really difficult. And so there are some secrets to Augusta, as you know, on 12, you want to, you know, you need to look at the 11th flag and see what it's doing to make your decision. There's an eddy effect that comes, you know, down 13, and then it starts to come up and work up 11.
Yeah,
right. And it also happens on 4, which I think 4 is the hardest par 3 in golf to me. And again, you'll see the flag on 3 blowing left to right. And so, but you're feeling it in the face because it's coming up 5, just like it is 3, and then working down 4, and it plays into the wind, even though the flag on 3 is showing left to right or even down. And it's, so the wind is very tricky at Augusta, and you need to make sure, again, because of the severity of the misses, you need to make sure that you're trusting what the wind is doing, that you know what the wind is doing. And then if you don't know, you need to hit less club to try and, or, you know, more flighted shot with less spin so that the ball gets there, even if I do miss the wind.
Yeah, that's something that people don't realize is how many shots you have to create around Augusta National, because there's nary a flat spot on the place. I mean, you've got 18 teeing grounds that are flat, and otherwise you're having to finagle something.
Absolutely. I think too, another thing too, and you know, Kurt's starting to understand this, is that, you know, Bryson, we'd take a levels out and measure the fairways and go, hey, you know, in this landing area, we're on a 3% downslope, which if we're hitting a pitching wedge, you know, now it's 3 degrees de-lofted and it's going further. Or we're on a 2% uphill slope or 2-degree uphill slope. This, you know, shot's going to come off with less, you know, these little bitty things, and it doesn't look like much, but, you know, again, the precision with your iron play is going to be the key. That and putting, of course. Actually, all of it, like you said, I keep telling people that you have to be a good iron player and a good putter, but then you have to drive it perfectly too. The course looks, when you're walking around it on paper, looks simple, but it's just not.
And then you add to that the gravitas of the moment and the price at the end of all of it. Yeah, that's one of those immeasurables that even you can't get the math for, huh?
Correct. Yes. And I tell Kurt, and I'm like, you know, everybody prepares for majors different. And I'm like, he wanted to go back out there, or they talked about going out on last Monday and playing around. And I was like, man, I'd rather you just rest. Look, you've never seen Bay Hill. You played it perfectly and won the tournament. There's no reason why I can't go out, get my work done. You rest. We'll see the golf course. It's just like any other golf course. We have to execute and don't build it up more than it should be. You know, people, I used to do that when I would play. You know, I'd play in a big tournament and I'd put all this pressure on myself to execute, and I couldn't, because I made it bigger than it should have been. Golf is, you know, Bryson, we always talked about it. It's just grass and air, right? And we're playing the course, we're playing the course.
Yeah.
I can't help that someone shot 8 under. We just need to do our thing.
Yeah. One more question, then I'll let you share an address where folks can get your marker, and I'll let you go. Thank you for all your time. the Rays Creek effect. It's the lowest part on the golf course. I will make a comment about it, and this one looks like it's right to left, but Rays Creek is over there, and the ball doesn't do what players are expecting. And then I get ripped on social media saying, you smoking stuff, Mark. Talk about the fact that in your yardage book, everyone has a dot on the green that shows the direction of where Rays Creek is, please.
Yeah, absolutely. My yardage books are right over there. I could open it up and show you. I highlight where Rays Creek is. And here's it's not that Rays Creek has an effect. It's that there are optical illusions, and that the ball is always going to the low point. Gravity is always taking the ball. A good example is the 17th green. Okay. There is a middle right pin on 17. If you watch this telecast, the pin will be there probably on Sunday, but anybody putting from the pin is middle right on 17. You will see everybody run that ball by 6-8 feet.
It's freaking fast, and it looks like it's up. I know the one you're talking about.
And it looks uphill, and it's lightning fast. But it's downhill because Rays Creek is that way, and it's an optical illusion. That green looks tilted right to left, but it's tilted. But in reality, it's left to right. I mean, gravity is what affects everything. If I throw a ball in the air, it's coming down. It's not going to go towards Rays Creek. But talking to architects about when you're building greens on steep land, they almost look tilted back into the mountain. So, you'll see there's an Indio effect in Palm Desert. Right. But that's just because that's the low point in these, we have mountains, and then the green looks tilted back when it's actually tilted the other way. But you're right. I do reference where Rays Creek is. And, the ball is going to go where the slope is. But again, optical illusions, and you need to know, because we can't see it. We need to know.
There you have it. The science of the master there matches the art of the speaker for a living. You legendary. Folks have learned so much. I'm sure they want to know more. Please tell them where they can find the ball marker first off. And if they want to follow you, if there's social media, website, any of that sort of stuff, please.
Yes, sir. So the website is trueaimmarker.com. Mm-hmm. And my email is tt@trueaimmarker.com. I encourage anybody that has questions about the price. The price is $100. You're not paying for the marker. You're paying for the technology in the marker. The marker is actually a game changer. I would not put it out there if I didn't know it didn't work. It truly works if you do the process properly. But please don't hesitate to text me or message me. I will get back to you. I'll probably give you my phone number and have a conversation with it. So I want to help people just as you do. This is, look, and I love the fact that I've had the opportunity to help Kurt just a little bit. He is an elite player, and I'm so excited for his, for the end of this season, to see how we do. But yeah, I want to help golfers. And so when I'm not working on the course, this is what I do. So please don't hesitate to call me with questions, or text me.
I'll be seeing you through the year, but I'll certainly be seeing you in Atlanta at the Tour Championship. Thanks for your time. I'm about to go order my marker. Folks, do the same. Tim Tucker, get some rest. Next week's going to be fun, man. Good luck.
I appreciate you. Thank you very much.